evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming today. My name is Olumide Olayinka, co-organizer of the Lagos Startup Week. We've been doing this for the past 4 years. It's been a journey. One thing we deal with is oftentimes we work with the community to bring together this event. And it's something we've done for the past 4 years. And we especially thank Alion Frante and the director in the house for supporting us for this year. It's going to be an amazing one. This theme, the theme for this year is collaboration. Together we can achieve more. It's something that we've always done, even right from the inception of the Startup Week itself. It's something that has helped us achieve or grown this big so far. Thank you all very much. On a final note, the schedule is quite cumbersome. Would encourage as many people to look at the schedule, because tomorrow we're not going to be here. We'll be in Facebook Hub, and Wednesday we're back here, so you don't miss around. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening.
Yeah, so I'll just echo him on that. Please do go through the quite comprehensive schedule of activities over this week. There are quite a few events that are very, I think, relevant, especially for this time. So, again, without further ado, let's call up our panelists. First up, can we have Shola Akinlade, co-founder Paystack, solving payment problems to help African companies become profitable and scale. Next up, can we have Peter Frykman, founder Driptech, an international water tech company that was acquired and is now looking, at opportunities across Nigeria. Next up is Damilola Thompson, Echo VC Partners, a seed, early stage, and growth VC fund. And last but not least, Fahim Saleh, co-founder GoCada, driving mobility across Africa. All right, guys. So, we've just been talking, or we've just been trying to get this ambience, right, of collaboration, even in this small room, right, with all the questions we were asking earlier. Collaboration can be hard, right, especially in a place like Nigeria. But let's start with you guys, right? So we know that respect and trust, right, breed stronger companies, right? The building block, I think, is trust. How have you built that into your companies, your personal lives, or the partnerships, right, that you guys have been into? Can we start with you, Dami?
Thank you, Shaya. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. Olumide, thanks for having me. So I'd say that trust is something that you build over time. I'd say that with marriage, you don't just meet someone and get married to them on the first day. You build it over a period of time by associating with the person, getting to know more about them, identifying with the challenges, and providing certain solutions as a product, providing certain solutions to the kind of challenges that you have either experienced with them or you know that they have had maybe from their childhood. I'd say that specifically for EcoVC, the problem that we're trying to solve is access to capital. We have been here since 2015, have invested in over 25 startups to date, and we're looking to do more. So I'd say that the startups that we have engaged, initially, the first conversation that we have with them, they're trying to assess us, we're trying to assess them, and just understand if our interests are aligned, and if they are the kind of entrepreneurs that we want to back and we want to support. And they're also doing due diligence and also understand if we're the kind of investors that they want to have. So I'd say that just by constant interaction and just letting them know that we identify with the problems that they're facing and how much we're willing to support them and just throw our weight behind them is something that we always put forward. I'd say that for a lot of our portfolio companies, we are always the first people that they run to when they're having challenges. The people that we have, some of our founders that we have gone way overboard for, and I was at a board committee meeting 2 weeks ago, and one of the founders that we had invested in was commenting about how the investors that that had invested in his company essentially just left him, gave him money, and literally just left him. And he was just thanking us for always being there and just like giving him a listening ear. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things about EcoVC, right? I think collaboration has always been sort of ingrained into the way that you guys wanted to engage with the ecosystem.
Yes, very much.
So, do you find that has worked well for you guys, right? In terms of being that open, in terms of being that collaborative, and really opening up or cross-pollinating, right? Business models and technologies and that engagement with your or the relationship between investor and startup. Like, how has that worked out for you?
So I'd say that's something that we try to do on set when we start engaging an entrepreneur, is let them know what our terms are. And that is typically the first thing. Once we pass the due diligence phase where we're interested and we know that we want to go ahead with investments, what we try to do is let them know what we would offer and the kind of investment terms. So everything is out in the open. So we're not trying to, there's nothing that we're not trying to sneak anything on you. We're not trying to sidetrack or trying to backtrack on our terms. I think something that we have seen with other investors, not in this ecosystem actually, is they give you a term sheet, and just when you're getting to this stage where you're about to close out, they're like, "Oh, we're sorry, we're not going to go ahead with this deal," and that is something that we're always very upset about, because there's a lot of effort that has been put in by the entrepreneur to get to that extent. And of course, he's said no to a couple of investors, and those investors, kind of just leave him alone. But then he has to go back to them and say, "Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, there's a deal that we're doing now where this same thing has happened, and we're saying, you know what? Regardless of that, we're willing to support you, even if this other investor doesn't want to go ahead with the deal." And the deal almost got scuttled, but we just rally round to get the deal done, and hopefully it should close in a couple of days. But I'd say that specifically with regards to just supporting entrepreneurs and other people in the ecosystem, we organize and just help out with a bunch of events, and just let people know that we're out there, and that we're willing to support and just help entrepreneurs any way that we can. We have office hours, just to listen to entrepreneurs and hear what they have to say. Yeah.
Okay. So Peter, right? How would you say that, as a social impact entrepreneur, right? How important has collaboration been for you, right, to your success and to the success of your past companies?
Okay, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure I've ever thought about collaboration in the context of social entrepreneurship and it being kind of more or less than other startups. I think when I think about collaboration in the context of a startup, it really starts with the team, because before you can collaborate outside of the team, whether they're companies, with governments, with your customers, you have to be able to collaborate as like a founding team and early employees. And for me, I would say that starts with understanding yourself as an entrepreneur. And so really kind of understanding your strengths and weaknesses in mentoring other startups, and also in reflecting on kind of my own startup journey. I realized and I saw that a lot of entrepreneurs do too many things, and they do things that they're not good at. And also telling somebody that they're not good at something is not a good way to convince them to stop doing it. But really, there are things that you do at an early stage startup because you're the only person, and you're mopping the floors, and you're doing the accounting, and you're doing the product development, you're doing the engineering, and you're doing everything. And very soon, if the company is going to grow and be successful, a lot of times that entrepreneur is the the bottleneck, the limiting factor, because they're doing things that no longer make sense for them to do. And so it's about understanding yourself. It's about understanding what you could accomplish if you gave up certain things and learned to trust and hand those off to other people. I think that for me, the beginnings of being able to trust other people were in understanding kind of my own limitations and also my own strengths. I think when I work with other entrepreneurs, it's more effective to start with people's strengths, because people tend to know what they're good at, and and usually it's best for the company if they can double down on those activities. And there are certain things that they've been doing just for legacy reasons that they don't even enjoy, and they should be handing off to someone else, and they should be cultivating that trust and delegating those things for the ultimate good of the company.
Okay, tell us a little bit about Driptech, right? And your journey with that, and how collaboration was a part of that, in terms of maybe even coming up with the product, or even within the ecosystems that you were part of. What is Driptech?
Yeah. So Driptech basically is a company that makes affordable irrigation equipment for small farmers. So it started when I was in grad school. I got the chance to basically do research with small plot farmers in Ethiopia, and we saw that they had tremendous water scarcity, and they had a need for the benefits of drip irrigation, but that traditional irrigation was designed for large-scale Western agriculture. So it just hadn't reached 90% of the world's farmers, but they had a need for a more affordable system. In order to make this, we had to basically develop a new product and a new manufacturing technology. So we came up with a laser manufacturing system that we could put anywhere in the world, and we could make low-cost drip irrigation there. So I quit my PhD. I started Driptech, and I started to build kind of the team, and over the course of almost 7-8 years, until it was eventually acquired by the market leader in India, where we were based. I had all sorts of challenges, wins, losses, in terms of building the team, in terms of basically making good and bad decisions around kind of like the people that I was collaborating with and the context, the roles that they were in. For me, in reflecting afterwards about kind of my experience, all of the best and worst decisions I made were around team, which is fundamentally about collaboration. I guess another way, since we're talking about collaboration, that you could think about kind of collaboration is really, for us, was with our end customers, which were kind of like the source of kind of, and the reason for the whole company. We sold a product at commercial terms to the end customer, and they made a tremendous return on investment. Our customers would regularly invest about $200 per acre of drip irrigation and see an increase in yield by $1,000 per year. So great investment for these customers. And that value, that collaboration, that kind of design of the product specifically to create value for the customers was the fundamental basis for the company, right? So that partnership with the customers, that collaboration with the customers was what made it possible to build an organization in the first place.
Okay, we're going to come back to that later. So, Shola, I don't know if you need an introduction, but please, I think it's, as one of the poster childs, right, for this ecosystem, especially in an industry like fintech, right? Can you give us a picture of your journey, right, within the ecosystem, and how collaboration has played a part? What does your company do for many of us who might not know?
Cool. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shola Akinlade. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Paystack. Paystack is a payments company, so we help merchants accept payments from their customers. We launched about 3 years ago, actually now 3.5 years, and now we help over 40,000 merchants accept over about $100 million every month. So it's we've made some progress. I think, yeah, like the journey has been very interesting. that's the shortest I could say. We launched Paystack because before then I was just doing some work for banks, and I thought that the payments, like there was an opportunity to build a payments company. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I just started, and very quickly we got into Y Combinator. So we got as for I think we got $120,000 for 7% of the company, which was a good deal as far as I was concerned. And so we had to create a company. We had to create a payments company, and the journey started. And I think it's been everywhere we've been to today has been extremely because people came to help us. My favorite Paystack, I won't say favorite, one of my favorite Paystack stories is when I think about when we were about to get into Y Combinator, when we were about to launch the company. I personally didn't think this was going to be a big deal. So I was telling some people yesterday that when we went to Y Combinator, my ambition was to just take a photo in front of SFO. Welcome to San Francisco. I was like, yeah, I've been there, you know. And because when we got there, so Y Combinator, they invite startups from all over the world, probably about 500, and they pick about 100. You know, so when we got there, I knew I was going to meet people from all over the world. And so one of the first companies I met, they were building a shirt that never gets dirty. So it's a white shirt, you pour dirty water on it, it doesn't get stained. I saw someone else building a bra that detects breast cancer. So you wear the bra, you install the app, and it scans you, and then if there's anything, you get a push notification. And so people were asking us, like, what are you guys working on? Like, I don't know. God, must I say it here? So we said we were working on payments in Africa. And they were like, wow, Africa, how many people are in Africa? I'm like, 1 billion. Like, whoa, you know. And so I think that was the beginning of a very long journey. And when I think of where we are today and how much help we've gotten from even, so when I think about on Paystack today, InterSwitch, I'm sure you probably know InterSwitch. It was a company that was doing, they have WebPay, which is a competing product. But Vev cards need to work on Paystack. so in fact, the collaboration starts from the product. You know, for our product to be successful, we need to go work with our competitors. I think it starts from there. We need to work with banks. Before Paystack, most of the banks were providing payment solutions for merchants. Today, the banks, at least 6 banks, partner with us to provide these solutions to their customers. You know, so I think on just growing through this journey, I think the first part of the collaboration is just figuring out how to partner with somebody, but still be in the same space with them. I think that's been the very first part. But I think so far it's been very, very good. I think the second part of it is, I would say also maybe talent, you know. All of us are here now. We're competing for the same talent, you know. I'm sure Fahim is, you know. So, but again, we have an ecosystem, and you have companies and you have talent, you know. And so just being able to, how do we like, as an ecosystem, build the talent pool in the ecosystem, but still make sure that the best talent are on my own side, not on your side. So I think that's the second part. So it's fair and it's fine, you know, and I think that works. And I think like the final part to it for me is the future, you know. When I think of the work we're doing at Paystack, I think we're creating a future that doesn't exist. And I guess the interesting part is how do you figure out your own part in that future? Because I know we're not going to solve all the problems. We're just going to do our part. EcoVC is going to do their part. GoCada will do their part and all that. So I think just figuring out what part you have to play in that future is, for me, like the interesting part of it, you know. And to be honest, we know that, oh, let's just get payments. Let's remove friction around payments. Let's build the ecosystem. Let's make sure that more companies are being built. We try to do a lot on the Y Combinator side. So when we launched Paystack, we were the first Nigerian company to get into Y Combinator. Today, there are 18 Nigerian companies in 3 years. You know, and we're not taking any credit for that, but my sense is that just being active in the ecosystem where things are thriving is very important. So I guess to summarize, Paystack is the result of a functioning collaborative ecosystem, and I'm just glad and proud at how much progress we've made at the ecosystem.
I like how you talked about, you know, collaboration started at the product level, right? And because of that, people who you might not, or who might not want to partner with you, right, had to and started looking at partner with you, right? So you look at the banks, you look at it into Switch, right? Just really briefly, when you look at the Nigerian factor that we talked about, right, trust being something that is a little scarce sometimes, right? How did you convince, you know, apart from the product, right? How did you convince some of these companies to work with you? And is that still something that is hard to do? Are they more open now because they, you know, because of just the nature of where fintech is and banking is?
Yeah, I think our answer was spot on. Like, it takes time. And I think for us, it was less about convincing the company and convincing the people in the company. So when I think about one of the first banks, our primary bank, or one of our big banks now, is Zenith Bank. I'm going to name drop them. But we got into Zenith Bank through an account officer. Like, I didn't know the MD, I didn't know anybody there, you know. So you just needed somebody that could align with and say, guy, help us, you know. And it worked out, you know. And there's some, when I did Diamond Bank, when I met the person there, what he told me was, oh, my wife used Paystack and she liked it. You know, so he had heard about us before. So my sense is that it takes time, but like it also takes like just serving people as individuals, like just doing your own thing one after the other. And then with time, you just build that reputation.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the secret, guys. Guy, help me now. All right. So, Fahim, I think intrinsically, right, GoCada from its inception has needed collaboration, right, to sort of become what it is, right, the success that it is. And I think your journey, even in the past, has been one of collaboration. So take us, not just from GoCada, right, but take us through that journey to even coming to Nigeria and becoming part of this collaborative ecosystem.
Yeah, well, it's been a long journey here. I don't know if a lot of you know about me, but I'm not from Nigeria. I'm actually from New York, and my parents are from Bangladesh. So Nigeria is a very foreign place to me. But motorcycle ride sharing kind of has a close place in my heart, because I went to Bangladesh in 2014 and I started a venture factory. And if you guys don't know what that is, it's an incubator of sorts where you tell people to start companies and you give them funding. And you know, I did that because I saw Bangladesh as a unique opportunity. 160 million people. Growing GDP, 7% year-over-year growth on GDP, very good economically, but nobody was looking at it from a technology perspective and saying, hey, this is a country that, you know, you should invest in. This country has problems just like any other country. So I went there in 2014 with some money that I saved up from other ventures that I started in New York, and we launched a couple projects, and one of the projects was a package delivery company that we called Patao, and Patao means to send in Bengali. And that was the only one that actually did kind of well. Everything else failed miserably. And I thought, you know, I was going to lose all my money. And this whole thing was a mistake, just like my parents said. I should have never gone there. Just stayed in New York. But I got, through my network and through collaboration, with my different friends and talking to them and networking with different, investors that they knew, I was able to get my first check, my first funding into a company. Before that, everything was profit driven. This whole raising money was completely foreign to me. I didn't understand it, didn't know how it worked. How does a company lose money and raise money? It didn't make any sense to me. But we got our first check, and he kind of was able to find every other connection to raise more capital for that business in Bangladesh. And I wasn't running the company. I just put a team together. I just networked in the Bangladeshi community. I didn't grow up there, so I didn't really know anybody. It was just talking to people, having conversations, meeting people, and I was able to find really good entrepreneurs that were not given a chance because for them to raise money in an environment like that, and I'm sure you guys are familiar in Nigeria. Back in the day when you want to raise money, they used to take 60% of your company or 70% of your company, right? It's very similar in Bangladesh. So for them to have a chance to own a meaningful part of their company and at the same time get funding was huge for them. So that company ended up raising, a lot of money, $20-30 million, and this was, we started with logistics, but it turned into actual motorcycle taxis. And it's funny because in Bangladesh, there is no such thing as a motorcycle taxi. 160 million people, listen to this, worse traffic than Lagos in Dhaka. Can you believe that? Worse than Lagos. That's how bad the traffic, nobody used motorcycle taxis. Nobody even thought of that as a potential, business. So when we started it, people thought we were crazy. We actually had to buy our own motorcycles and hire our own full-time drivers. But then after people realized, wow, this makes a lot of sense. I can get through traffic, it's cheaper. All these people started buying motorcycles, and then it was a freelance platform. So when I went back to New York, I was like, okay, I've done a lot of other businesses, but what kind of business in 2 to 3 years is able to create that kind of value? So I wanted to see where else I could recreate this. And it was definitely not New York. So I had to figure out what that place was. And through just some research that I did on Wikipedia, believe it or not, that's all it was. It was just literally me going on Wikipedia and looking at GDP numbers and looking at population numbers and looking at what place has a lot of traffic. Nigeria is number 7 in most populous country. Bangladesh is number 8. Okay, and then there's like the US, there's like China, there's like India. I'm like, okay, none of these places make sense, so they have too much competition. Indonesia, that place already has like a $10 billion motorcycle ride-sharing company called Gojek. But Nigeria, what's this? Nigeria. What do I know about Nigeria? Okay, I don't want to say, you guys know, I'll just say it. I saw videos, scam artists, all this stuff, like the typical stuff, and I hate to say it, but that is actually, people don't know much about Nigeria other than that. But the numbers looked right, and I didn't know anybody in Nigeria. So I told my parents I'm going to Nigeria. So I went over, I kind of explored the terrain. I landed, I went straight to VI. And I went to the mainland once and kind of just looked around a little bit and then went right back to VI because I was too scared to walk around the mainland. But what I knew there was a lot of Okadas. I knew there was a lot of bike taxis, and I knew what I read online was actually real. Another thing I did was I also searched for Lagos and traffic on Google, and there was a lot of results. So yeah, how do I form a company in Nigeria without knowing anybody in Nigeria? That was a question. And there was an option of what I could do in Bangladesh, which is network for a couple months. I had that option. But that would take a couple months. And from what I've heard in the VC scene, there was already numerous companies knocking on the door ready to start this business. So I had to move fast. So what I decided to do was I I made a post on LinkedIn, and I wrote, looking to start the next billion-dollar company in Nigeria. If you would like to join as one of the founders, please message me or link anybody that would be interested. And if they become part of the founding team, then I will give you $1,000 or $1,000 in Bitcoin. And at the end of it, I put, by the way, preferably, don't hate me, foreign educated. And I said that because I thought somebody who had a foreign education would be like traveled around, understood what Uber was, understood Taxify, understood, had a more worldly sense of the view of the world. So that's why I put that in there, not thinking much of it. And also, like, having Harvard on your resume and then getting funding looks good. That's where it didn't come anywhere from like a bad side to that. But what I found was I started getting all these responses, and they were mostly my friends. But then the responses I started getting were, who is this guy? Who does he think he is? Like, not saying that that we can't be from Nigerian schools and be part of this founding company. And then they started tagging their friends and like, can you believe this guy? And then they start tagging their friends and they start tagging their friends. And I'm like, oh my God, should I take down this post? Because I started getting a lot of just really hateful comments. But then, something funny started happening. I started getting comments from people that were tagged in the hateful comment, but they're like, hey, I know somebody, right? And that was my most popular social media post ever. It got like 400 comments, and I probably spoke to, so out of the 400 comments, I had 30 people that I liked, that I wanted to talk to based on their their profiles. I talked to 20 of them on Skype, and then I really liked 10 of them. So then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go back to Lagos. I met all 10 of them. I liked 4 of them after that, and I'm like, this was in December of 2017. I asked them, are you guys ready to get started? And they're like, you have funding? I'm like, yeah. They're like, okay, let's go. And that's how we started. December 2017, we said we're gonna do it. January 2018, we started. And it wouldn't have, I would never be able to start this company without those co-founders. And we started the company January 2018. We all lived in. Oh, this is another thing. We all lived in a house together, because I thought that would be a good way for us to build trust quickly. It was all about doing it quickly. How can we do it quickly? So we were all living in a house together. I got the first-hand view of Nigerian living, and like these guys were loud, and man, like I had some of the like. Turkey's very popular here. Turkey's like a Thanksgiving thing in the U.S. I was like, what? I don't know. Anyways, it was just we got things going. Everybody built this trust, this friendship really quickly, and it was a great experience. But there's a lot of ups and downs with that. But at the same time, this company would have never existed without me, writing a post on LinkedIn, and I actually did give 1 or 2 people $1,000 in Bitcoin. So yeah, collaboration definitely happened with that. Without Nigerian counterparts, this never would have happened. I wouldn't even know where to start alone here, right?
Okay, so just really quickly, how you guys have a laser focus, right, on your fleet, right? I think you see your drivers not as drivers, right? They're partners, right? So they're what? Pilots. They're pilots, right? So in that sense, you're really going at it in a different way, right? In a really collaborative way, right? So how do you build? Because now we want to talk about culture, right? How do you build like that right culture that keeps that collaborative environment, one that people feel is open and they feel respected and there's actually trust, right?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. There's the motorcycle bike taxi space has obviously blown up since January of 2018. I started the business with people saying, this will never work, and I'm like, why not? It's worked everywhere else, and now people are like, why didn't I think of that, right? But I think there's something very unique that we're doing, and it comes from a place of honesty and truthfulness. Like we really care about the drivers. Like we're not messing around. Like I don't only do business to make money. I do business because I want to make an impact. I don't want to be on my deathbed and say, oh, I made a lot of money. I want to be on my deathbed and say, hey, I did something, right? So I mean, I think everybody at the company really cares about the drivers, and I think we can make a big impact. And when we go out there and we have meetings with the drivers and they all come, and I tell them that, hey, I'm going to do something, or hey, let me listen to your opinions. I do it from a place of truth. Like I really do want to, try to improve their lives. So I think it's just really being honest. Even when I do something wrong or the company does something wrong, I'm honest. I say, hey, yeah, we were actually charging you more and we didn't tell you. I'm sorry. We should have actually put this out there. And they're like, oh, you were charging me more. I didn't even know. And there's a whole ruckus. But they're like, hey, listen, he actually told you that he was charging more. And it's all just truthfulness. As long as you're not trying to do anything bad, why would you not say the truth, right? So I think the drivers really understand that, and I think that's how, what really differs us, at least for the drivers, from other bike taxi companies.
All right, we're going to open it up for questions in a little second. That's very, very important. We want to make sure that this is as collaborative as possible. So, Dami, right, you guys have a really amazing cohort, right, of diverse startups. How do you sort of bring all of that together? Like, do you guys sort of motivate founders to sort of share ideas, share problems, pain points? Do you sort of, I know you've spoken about cross-pollinating, but how does that work practically, right? Are some startups helping to fill the weaknesses of others? How do you guys really create that environment within your portfolio?
Okay, so I think that before we decide to make an investment, something that we try to do is look for the gaps in the startups that we have in.
Can you hear her?
Okay. Look for gaps in the startups that we have invested and look for startups that are solving those problems. And so we already know that this startup will be a good fit for the other one. And so that is also one of the drivers for us to invest in that company. And we, as much as possible, try to do everything that we can to make that investment. I'd say that post-investment, something that we also do is we have strategy sessions with them just to understand what they're going through. So we have an entire department called portfolio operations that work directly with our founders to just understand their day-to-day problems and help them with it. So even if it was with respect to some kind of connections that they needed, something that maybe even is not a problem that one of our startups is solving, we'll connect them to another startup that we know, that we've heard about, that is solving that problem. And then the other thing that we also do is we have Founders Day every year. So it's an annual event where all our founders come together. We handpick some of them to give, like keynote speech. We have people who run like PE firms and other VC firms to also come in to walk them through and talk them through kind of fundraising, and also people who are experts in their own field to do the same thing. So I'd say that is something that we also sell to founders or to entrepreneurs that we're investing in, and saying that you're not going to be going this alone. We're in it with you all the way.
Okay. Do we have any questions yet? Anyone itching with a couple of questions for any of the guys? Okay, I see 3 hands up. We'll take 2 right now and then a few later. Okay, let's start with you. You put your hand up first. Just a short one.
My name is Deji. I have a question for Shola and the co-founder of GoCada. The kind of collaboration I want us to look at, the collaboration between the company and the customers in the global market. You talk about the negative narrative about African startups. So you are building a product not just for the African market, but for the global market. How can you just, despite the negative narrative that we have, how can you sell your product to the global market beyond the African market? That's my question.
Did you guys get that?
Yes. Yeah, I think one of the things we're trying to do at Paystack is to make it easy for anyone to sell to anybody anywhere in the world. My sense is that the way we grow our economy is if one person can sell to everybody versus if you're restricted to people that are in front of you. So, and there's a lot of work we're doing there. I think thankfully last year, Visa actually invested in Paystack. Stripe invested in Paystack. So, from a technology and a brand perspective, there's a lot we've been doing, and I think that's happening. And just, we're still making more progress. We're still trying to figure it out. Today, we allow people charge in multiple currencies too, so you don't even have to charge in Naira. You can charge in USD and get paid in USD if you want to get paid in USD. So I think those are some of the things we're doing. I think it's still a lot of work in progress, to be honest. I think American banks still don't like Nigerian merchants. So I think we're making progress and we're doing a lot of Israel engagement. So I guess it will keep getting better. Yeah.
I mean, from an investment perspective, it's just gonna. I mean, it's still a very early, economy in the venture space. I mean, relatively, I guess, compared to other countries. I mean, as the more money that Nigeria raises, the more money that Africa raises, the more eyeballs that will be on the country. And honestly, this is the last frontier, right? This is where the highest growth is going to happen for the longest period of time before things peter off. So I mean, the eyeballs are coming, right? It's going to take a while before it's at the level of Asia or China or whatnot. But it's important to start exploring ideas and building those future businesses now, because you don't want to be left behind when all of the VCs are here and they're like, hey, who has a team, who's doing something, right? And as far as products, I mean, I'm not. Products are a little bit hard. I don't really understand tangible things as much, but I think services. I see people on Upwork like selling their services from Nigeria all the time, and some of these people are making $50, $60, $90 an hour. It's not because they're from Nigeria. It's because they're skilled. So I think there's platforms available out there that allows for global collaboration, like Upwork, where if you're somebody that's talented, if you're somebody that's hardworking, you're gonna get what the global rate is. So yeah, that's what I have to say on that.
Can
You got a
I
question
have a
there?
follow-up on that?
Yeah.
Actually, I would love to hear a little bit more, since on the topic of talent. Like, what do you look for in people that you hire? Because in my experience, interviewing and hiring, over 100 people.
In Nigeria?
Not in Nigeria. No, outside of Nigeria. But I found that there were certain things that it was very hard for me to change about somebody in terms of, were they trustworthy, were they hardworking, and were they creative? And those were the things that I kind of focused on in my interview process, because I found out that if somebody wasn't aligned on those with me, there was going to be a lot of friction. So, like, what do you guys look for in your team?
So for programmers specifically, I always look for. I think this like really applies for anybody. I look for somebody that's passionate about what they're doing, regardless of compensation is important, but somebody that's passionate about programming, or somebody that's passionate about marketing, or somebody that's passionate about finance. They're not just doing it because they're going to make money. They're doing it because they actually like it. So that's really important. For programmers specifically, I look for people that have done independent projects. Have you done something independently, not in your class, not for work, but something that you've done because you wanted to do? And then I always look for somebody who's really, really, really pushy on compensation, because if of course you want to get paid what you're worth, but if you're doing something you really like and you want to join this company and you think it's something you can really make a big impact on, if somebody's really pushing you for 10%, 5% more compensation, and they won't move or they won't budge, it kind of gives you an idea of where their priorities lie.
I think for us, or for me, we try to answer 3 questions. I think the first question is, do we believe you have the capacity to do the job? The second question is, do we believe you will drive, you can get the right results? So one thing is to be able to have the capacity. Number 2 is to be able to actually achieve the results. And then number 3 is that will you demonstrate Paystack's values? I think one of
which are?
Exactly. That's exactly what I was about to say. I think when I think about the kind of company we're building, when I think about what is going to make us successful, I think it definitely won't be money, because so many other companies that are playing in our space have money. They have licenses, they have everything. So I think it's going to boil down to 2 things. What do we believe in that they don't believe in? What are we willing to do that they won't do? And so very early into the company, we defined what our values were. We have 6 values. A, choose transparency. So the right Paystack person is very transparent about their work, about what they're thinking, communicate clearly, embrace the mission. This is a mission. This is payments is broken. We have to figure it out. Practice kindness, because of course we have to be kind. Pursue growth and learning, and insist on high standards, because payments is very high. So thankfully now we're about 90 people. So there's some structure around it now. We have questions that really help us answer some of those things. So I can give you some expo on some of our interview questions if you want to. Yeah. So one of the questions we ask, what I ask is what kind of people do you find it difficult to work with? And so in the way they answer that question, you start figuring out the kind of person they are. Another question I like to ask.
I always like to ask somebody, what do you think that we should be looking for somebody in this role?
Exactly.
Because if I just ask somebody what their strengths are, they say a bunch of random
Exactly.
BS. But if I say, what do you think I should be looking for, then they actually end up describing what their actual strengths are. Exactly. And their experience.
Exactly. No, that's correct. Also, just ask people what they're looking for in their next role, and they describe it. So I guess just also pattern matching. My newest product thinking question is how do you design an alarm clock for a deaf person? And just walk them through that. Sometimes the answer is very simple. Sometimes the answer is very hard. But it's less about the question and just more about having a framework for knowing if the person can do the work, if the person can deliver results, and if the person can be a Paystack person.
So my first question is, you guys have been around since 2015. I'm just wondering, what shift have you seen in the marketplace? What was your view and thinking around investment back in 2015? And what is that view and investment today? So I can imagine that you guys came with a lot of optimism back then. Where you guys right now, what is your focus? What has changed? For the rest of the panel, I have a question around the macroeconomics of Nigeria. What keeps you up at night from a macroeconomic standpoint?
Thank you. So I'd say that initially when we started, the thinking about the regular coming to invest in Nigeria, you're coming with money, and people are going to be coming at you with different ideas and different plans about what they want to do. And I think initially our terms were very aggressive. And so that was the thinking okay, we have investors' money, we need to get it with our lives and everything. But I think that over the years, as we have invested in a couple of companies and just met with people who are extremely interested and very passionate about the problem that they're trying to solve, we have seen that we have relaxed our terms and not being as not being as trying to secure all the areas, allowing for more laxity. And giving entrepreneurs more room than
Do you mean the protective provisions or the financial terms of the deal?
Sorry, what did you say?
Do you mean the protective provisions or the financial terms?
Yeah, I mean financial terms. because it's early stage, so there's not much there. So just losing up around our terms and just come to understand the typical Nigerian entrepreneur or the kind of entrepreneurs that we like to invest in. And so that way, we know right now that our decision making is also faster because we're able to sieve through the kind of people, the kind of entrepreneurs that we think are not right for the investment that we're offering at the particular stage that we are. And just say, okay, you know what, we like you, but we're not a good fit right now. And we're happy to, continue to work with you if you just send us updates. I think that was a question. Yeah.
I'm never going to talk to you again.
I'm sorry. Okay. He had a macro.
What keeps you awake?
Me or them?
Everyone.
What keeps that you don't die, you don't lose our money.
No, sorry. Let me just rephrase it again. So, looking at the country, so this is Nigeria, right? Obviously, political risk, economic risk, socio-economic risk. What do you worry about? Like, what is the thing that that keeps you up at night? You guys are investing massively. You're hiring people. You look into the future. You've got a long-term play here. What are the things that you really worry about?
Okay, I think the first thing for us is devaluation, and that affected us in 2017. We had made a couple of investments. Most of the startups that we had invested in were almost profitable, and then devaluation happened, and they literally just halved. And I think that the learning point for us at that point was diversify into startups who are solving African challenges. So they don't necessarily have to be based in Nigeria or based in Africa, but they have you really will have a base in Africa, but you could be, like a Delaware company, but it's solving an African problem. So I'd say that was something that hit us, and we have kind of solved the problem, but there are stories about another devaluation happening, very soon. Hopefully it doesn't hit too much. But I'd say that is one major thing. The other thing I would say is an entrepreneur who just, after we fund, decides that he wants to buy a car or he wants to buy a house. And thankfully, we haven't had any one of those because I'd say that we're very picky with the startups that we invest in, and just startups who are very focused on the problems that they're solving. And just don't die. Help us to help you and help our investors, kind of thing. Yeah.
I'd say for us, so even if the economy, goes to the toilet, for us, there's two sides of it. I think we have a kind of business that no matter if the economy is worse, I think more people take us, right? Because we're cheaper. So they'll take us instead of Taxify or Uber, and the traffic is still going to be here. So, in the demand side, I'm not worried about. The problem is the global economy affects valuations. And right now entrepreneurs have had the advantage of, very, very little dilution or comparatively little dilution compared to when the economy, wasn't doing as well. So the valuations will definitely, take a hit. And that will cause founders like me to have to give up more of our companies, and that's unfortunate, obviously. But as long as my thing is, what I try to do is I try to run a lean business, and I try to run a business that at some point, if we turn some levers, can be profitable. So hopefully, if that situation comes where the economy does kind of go the other way, and it's harder to raise capital, or you have to raise capital at lower valuations, that we can survive with very little capital, or even no capital if we're break even.
I think for us maybe 2 or 3 things. The one is infrastructure development. I think just because we're in technology, people need to have power to charge their phones so that they can pay online. So people need to have internet needs to work very well. And all that. So I think one of the, can we continue to just grow? Can state of infrastructure continue to improve? I think that is very important to us. Another thing that I would say maybe worries me sometimes is ease of doing business. I think that just given the kind of business we do, more people need to be able to do businesses for Paystack to like continue to grow. So when I think about next year, for example, how many new businesses will be created next year? How much growth? How much can those businesses grow? And so what is happening? And so some of those things, we try to have some control of that, but half of those things we don't have control over it. So we're just hoping that more things, more opportunities, and just more things are being done to make it easy for people to be able to start new businesses.
I would say, I would give kind of one example. So I just moved here, and I moved here for a variety of reasons. I guess you could say some of them are macroeconomic, about the opportunities that I see here and the environment that I see here. And like I was talking about with some of the panelists before, it's, anywhere that you start a company, there are going to be problems. And it's just a question of what problems do you want to have, because there's problems everywhere. So like early on at Driptech, we knew that the most small plot farmers were in China and India. And we did some business development in both China and India. Very different countries in terms of how they operate in terms of agriculture. And actually our first big deal was with a local government in China. We got connected through an investor, and we went and, shook hands and had a bunch of meals and did this deal. And we rolled out drip irrigation for 200 farmers in this rural China. And it was super easy. The government wanted to do it, and it happened, and we got paid, and everything was good. And at the same time, we were looking and seeing, okay, well, we were building partnerships, we were doing distribution, we were setting up dealers in India, and we were doing kind of like a lot more legwork to get to the end customers. But ultimately, we decided to leave China and really focus on India because of the business model basically in China is working with the government, and the government is very effective. And in India, it's selling to the farmer because, all of those channels actually to reach the farmer exist in spite of government failings. And you can do marketing, and farmers are actually used to buying things themselves, like in India, whereas in China, you could talk to farmers all day long, and they weren't going to buy anything. They would wait for their local government to procure it and then, give it to them for free. So, there's a successful business selling drip irrigation to small governments in China, but that wasn't the business that I wanted to build. The predictability and the business development cycle of that wasn't interesting to me. So ultimately, when you look at at a country like Nigeria and a city like Lagos, there are a lot of customers, and they have a lot of problems, and there are a lot of opportunities to create value. And if you can create enough value for those customers and convince them to share some of that value with you, that's where you get a successful business. And for me, that's a relationship that I understand of products and end customers. And I just try to avoid the government.
Okay, so we'll take one more question.
Hello, good evening, everybody. My questions, first and foremost, is to Fahim. About a month ago, it was in the news that, are you with me? About a month ago, it was the news that Go-Kart went off the roads. Okay, yeah, at some point. So everybody was wondering what went wrong with you guys.
Shut down. Yeah.
So please, who want to share that experience with us? I want to know that. Then again, for Damilola, you guys, EcoVC, you've been around for a while because I've had one or two interactions with you guys. My question is, what are your major criteria right now for investments? What's your investment cap? And in what sectors do you actually invest? That's for you. Then again, for the general panel. But again, Shola, I need you to answer this. How do you value a pre-revenue fintech startup? Okay, because one of the major problems you have as a startup in this environment, especially if you're doing tech, is a violation. You're going to deal with investors every day who want to, I don't want to use the word cheat. who want to possibly rip you off, okay? And you have to come up with a valuation that's actually reasonable for both parties to be able to understand. So please, for everybody in the panel, please can you just tell us some things about how you value a pre-revenue startup, as a matter of fact. Thank you.
You just come up with a number, literally. The whole valuation. Before I raised any capital, I thought this whole raising capital, valuations, blah 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 thing was very data-centric, scientific, high level. I didn't understand it yet. I need to get more education or more experience. But it's literally just, some VC, being interested in it, and then that VC has this enemy, another VC that's like, oh, I can't have you in it. Like things like that happen all the time, and it's a lot of it is emotional. FOMO, fear of missing out. I don't want to miss out on this deal that could become huge. If you have a lot of interested parties, then you're more likely to get a higher valuation because it looks like signaling, I guess. Signaling shows everybody else shows that they're interested in it. So they've kind of done some of the legwork for you to say, hey, this is something that's valuable. You should take a look at it. And sometimes that's enough for somebody to not even do proper due diligence and just put money in. It's so much more emotionally driven than I ever thought. You just have to figure out how to make yourself the hot girl in the room. Pardon my metaphor, but that's actually how it is. How can you make yourself, whether it's how you speak or how you present yourself or how much you network or the way you position your startup to make yourself look hot and have VCs vie for you. As far as the shutdown, right? The shutdown was something that actually I was thinking about for a long time. And actually, I wasn't going to call it a shutdown. I was going to call it GoCada 2.0. And I was thinking about it for a while because what I realized was we had, hundreds of drivers, and that's great. But a lot of these drivers, were not great. We didn't filter our drivers. We just had, hey, come on, join as a driver. We'll train you a little bit. And I'll be honest with you, this is, I took over as CEO. If many of you don't know, but prior, there was a lot of metrics that were being thrown out there that weren't necessarily true. And I was just like, okay, well, it's not a big deal. I mean, whatever. I mean, I'm not running a company, but I'm an investor regardless. But, it's like, I think this happens a lot, actually, where kind of metrics are just thrown out there and people don't actually have any real valid numbers behind it just because they wanted to make it look good. So we had something that said we only accept 5% of drivers. No, we accepted 80%, 70% of drivers at the time. And that was unfortunate, but and because of that, our drivers were not that great. They were breaking laws. They weren't as bad as something, but they were still, in my opinion, very, very bad. They were breaking laws. They were upcharging from fares. They were not using the app. They didn't know how to use Google Maps. A lot of these things I noticed for a long time, and I kind of just ignored it. But I'm like, I didn't feel right about that. I was like, I want to build a good business. So, we gave drivers a chance, and we told them, hey, you guys have to pick up your act. You have to get your metrics up. You have to stop breaking the law, blah, blah, blah. And we put a cutoff point. And if you didn't meet the mark at that cutoff point, we're going to give you your bike. We're going to paint it black. You're gone. All right? We're only going to keep the drivers that want to be at GoCada and want to adhere to our rules and want to actually provide a good experience. Because we're GoCada. Every driver that's out there represents our brand, right? And if one driver breaks the law, for that person, GoCada's a bunch of drivers that break laws. So I wanted to make sure, how can we have a service where every single driver we have, adheres to laws, drives within the lanes and not against traffic, all these things, provides you helmet, is really well mannered, looks professional. How can we make sure that that's consistent? And in order to do that, we had to, unfortunately, remove the bad drivers because as we got new drivers, what we found was they were good in the beginning, but then they learned the bad behaviors of those drivers and they emulated it, right? So what we needed to do in order to grow was have a good set of drivers to start. So whenever we got new drivers, they emulated the good behaviors, and that just was a recursive cycle. And I was writing the blog post. I remember my designer was right behind me. I was writing Gokada 2.0, and I was writing that entire post. And I'm a big prankster. I don't know if many of you know, but one of my first companies out of college was a prank calling app called Prank Dial, and that made like a bunch of money. And that's actually how I started everything else after that. But he was right behind me. I'm like, dude, what do you think about this? And I deleted Gokada. I deleted 2.0. I was like, Gokada is shutting down. Because I thought it was funny because I was gonna put, hey, just it's shutting down. We got so much competition. All this all this government stuff's happening. I can't handle it anymore. I'm out of here. By the way, I'm just joking. we're just stopping for a week and we're coming back. And I thought, in my thinking, there's perception and then there's the reality of things. And the perception of it would be, oh my God, Gokada's shutting down. Oh wow, like they couldn't do it. Opay, the name that would not be named. Opay killed them, or the government was shutting them down, or whatever, or they couldn't get enough funding. So that's what I'd have to deal with for a week. Okay, it's not the biggest deal. In that week, we basically got rid of the bad drivers. We retrained all our drivers. We gave them all new gear, Bluetooth helmets, new shoes, new bikes. I don't know if you guys saw them, but they are phenomenal. Those bikes, they barely need repair. They're Indian bikes, and they're awesome. And we came back a week and a half later, and we got all this bad press. Gokada's shutting down. Gokada's shutting down. We got so much press. We didn't pay a dime for it. We didn't pay a dime. And what I realized very early on when I started Gokada was bad press isn't bad, right? It was I want to be lean. Bad press came out. That's great. But then when we came out with all our bikes and all our new drivers and that good experience, everybody was looking at us. And again, we paid no money, right? People came to us, wrote these stories, and we didn't pay a dime. And now all of a sudden, I don't think it's fully gone yet because we don't have enough drivers on the road. But as you see more and more drivers get on the road, and the experience is just so much better than you would ever expect. From a bike taxi, that whole Gokada shutdown thing is going to erase away. And I think it actually, in the long run, helped us really differentiate ourselves as the premium bike taxi brand compared to Opay or the others.
On fundraising, there's like Kahim said, it's really kind of whatever you can get people to compete over and agree on. But one thing that I've found kind of is maybe a useful way to think about it is that, for an investor to come in, especially kind of institutional investor to come in to a kind of a round of funding, whatever that size of the round, they want a meaningful stake in the company, right? So, when you look at rounds of funding that get done, they all tend to be for something like 20 to 40% of the company, right? There's exceptions to this, of course, but like most early stage venture capital rounds are for something like 20 to 40% dilution, regardless of how much money is raised. So in some cases, it's better to just think about how much money can I raise for that amount of the company, and how far can that get me, rather than saying, okay, I need this much, I'm going to try to negotiate on this percentage, because, ultimately investors, they're going to come in, they want to have a meaningful stake in the business. So it's actually, in some ways, more easier to negotiate the amount of money that sort of like represents than the actual percentage. But overall, I think that actually people, and the ecosystem puts way too much emphasis on fundraising and it almost becomes kind of like the end goal, and people talk about fundraising. It's all about fundraising and raising funds, and actually I think that the companies that focus on raising talent and on creating value for their customers rarely have too much trouble raising funds. Ultimately funds are a tool to build a successful business that is built on team and on customer value. And that's a great segue to a plug for the talent workshop that I'm going to be leading later this week. So if you want to learn more about specifically about building high impact kind of startup teams. There's look at the schedule. I don't know, it's on Friday or maybe Thursday.
I just want to add something to that. Like, there's been a lot of businesses that have raised a lot of capital, like Uber, and all kinds of businesses that are losing a ton of money and have raised a bunch of capital. But you'll find that businesses that are able to do that successfully, and you hear about them, those are usually the outliers. You don't hear about all the businesses that raise a ton of capital and fail miserably, right? They just go away, and we only look at Uber and we look at all these other companies. That is actually a strategy. A lot of investors, and I've seen this. They're like, let's just pump the valuation, let's just grow the numbers, blah blah blah. Let's just just keep growing. That's not it's not really sustainable in the long run. You have to build a real business, and I'd say that you could do that, and you can keep raising capital and growing the numbers and losing money, and keep raising capital, losing more money, and at some point you could sell your stake and you made a bunch of money. That happens rarely, I'd say. Travis, for example, of Uber. But what always works is a real business. Never doesn't work. Always works. A business that's profitable always works. So, if you want the highest chance of success, build a real business. And have really good unit economics that for every dollar you add, you make more than $1. And that always works. So, just follow common sense. Do not go with the herd. Think for yourself. I thought I was going crazy when Batao, even though I made a good amount of money on it, was losing boatloads of money, millions a month, and I made more money on that company than I ever did from all the profitable companies I have in the past. And I actually got very lucky, honestly. I'll tell you honestly, I did. Because if we didn't have the right investor connections, if we didn't have the right appeal, if we weren't at the right place at the right time, it would have never happened, honestly. But I built all these other businesses in the past, apps. I built apps when I was in high school, apps when I was in college, prank calling app, $0 startup, maybe $100 from birthday money or something like that. But that app made $10 million in 10 years. Right? It's possible. Just think differently, be lean, don't follow the herd, and the internet's out there. Things are cheaper than ever to do. It really is possible.
Okay, just really quickly. So in that vein, let's talk problems and barriers, right, to collaboration. So are there any barriers to collaboration that you guys see in this ecosystem that could potentially hurt your company as you try to scale? Or are there any lessons that you might have learned from failed partnerships with companies, co-founders, investors, any of the partnerships that you had to jump into, right? Okada?
Yeah, I'll tell you the story of how I found how I put that founding team together, and I'll also tell you the story how we fell apart. Okay? I put a founding team together. I gave them all, equity, a significant amount of equity, the same amount of equity as I had actually. Even though I put in all the capital, I was still spending, I was on the ground in the business. And I gave them all great salaries. I think I gave, each person like $3,000 a month or something. A lot of money. I knew that was a lot, but I was like, okay, whatever. They'll do a good job. They have equity. They'll be motivated. Quickly, I found that, not quickly, but I slowly found money was missing, right? And it quickly became apparent to me that, just because you give somebody equity or just because you give somebody a great salary doesn't mean that you can trust them, right? You gotta still be careful. You gotta still put in those processes in place. And I say that with I don't say that in the worst way because we lost some money, but honestly, those guys that helped start the company, I wouldn't have been here without them, right? So it happened, man. So many ups and downs with that. But yeah, it's something that always happens with co-founders. Relationships stumble, things happen like that. And it's honestly made me a more knowledgeable investor in Nigeria and a founder, figuring out where all the where all the money can be lost and kind of just tightening it down. But yeah, that's definitely one of the big ones for me at GoCada.
Any barriers? Anything that you think maybe regulation is one that maybe?
Yeah, so I don't have any stories yet.
Hopefully not.
Exactly. But I think when we try to collaborate, I really try to figure out if it's the right collaboration, if we're adding value. I think, to be honest, and I'm glad you're talking about this, I think it's easy to say collaboration. Like, it's easy. That's the easiest part of collaboration. When it's time to actually collaborate and do the work, that's when it starts becoming clear that it's not like necessary, or one party is not doing their part. So my sense is that some of the things I learned very early is that like if it's somebody that is bigger than you and you did like once it's not balanced, then maybe you don't need to overdo it. Just do your thing. I know this sounds very counterintuitive, but I think you shouldn't just collaborate for the sake of collaboration. Like, you should collaborate because both of you are exchanging value. So so I think that principle has really helped us. And yeah.
I'd like to build on that, actually. So the idea of kind of doing the work, I think so when we first developed this technology for Driptech, we thought, okay, we have this manufacturing technology. It's this sweet laser machine. We can make the best, lowest cost drip irrigation. We're just going to license this, and drip irrigation companies are going to buy it and they're going to distribute this. And we started looking into it, and we realized, well, drip irrigation companies don't know how to make this product. They don't know how to sell this product to this customer in these locations. So, okay, we're going to have to actually use it ourselves, set up our own factory, and we'll make this product, and then we'll give the product to distribution companies. The distribution companies will deal with the customers. And it turned out there weren't distribution companies that really knew how to explain this product and the value of this product and go to the farmer's field and do the installation. And so then, ultimately the end of the story is, me running a company in India with rural sales officers running around on motorcycles selling drip irrigation direct to small farmers, because ultimately you have to kind of do the work. You have to do everything. And when I talk to entrepreneurs, and one of the ways I can tell whether or not they have been involved in something real before is whether they realize how much work it's going to be, or whether they think that they're going to be just build an app that's like a platform, and I'm going to make this thing, and then I'm going to and then once I make it, then I'm going to sell it to the telcos, and the telcos are going to distribute it. Or like the oil company, they'll figure out how to get it to customers. These big companies don't know how to get stuff to end users. They can put it on the shelf, but they're not going to sell your product for you. So when you're thinking about building a company, I don't know, maybe it's good not to know how much work it's going to be. Because maybe then you'd never do it. But I don't know. But when I'm looking at this next opportunity, I think a lot of the opportunities are where people are like, oh, that's too hard, that's too operationally intensive. That's where the opportunities are on actually engaging directly with customers, on doing kind of last mile distribution, on solving the real problems for the end user. And there's very little value in kind of playing it safe and being we're gonna aggregate demand, and then we're gonna connect them to the local service person who's gonna actually connect. It's there's too many people already trying to do that, and there's no differentiation. So kind of do the work. And the thing is, it's hard to find people who are willing to do the work. And when you're starting a company, one of kind of my biggest talent insights is that you can almost never find somebody who's done it before who's willing to join your company. If they've done it before, then they're already too expensive for you, and they don't want to kind of get in on the ground floor and do it again, almost always. And even if you could get them on board, it's not necessarily a good idea because they may not have anything to prove. It may be hard for you to work with them in a team dynamic, but they might be a great advisor. They might be a great mentor. And oftentimes, finding somebody who has potential and is willing to work hard and who has something to prove, and then pairing them with the mentor or advisor is actually the best way and the only way that you can build a team at like a startup.
I'm just going to add that I think we were talking about this earlier about collaboration being great, but also how collaboration can be bad in some instances. Like, one of the things I hate are meetings, like excessive meetings, meetings that are an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours long. They just are not productive. If you have a meeting and it's not, if everybody can't provide input at that meeting, or if everybody is not prepared to provide input at that meeting, that is an inefficient meeting. Meeting should be in half an hour. I think, and so that, I think that's, one of the ways like that collaboration can be hurtful for a company. If every other day you have the entire company talk about all the different parts of the company, it's not going to be very, it's not going to be very efficient, and you're not going to get a lot of stuff done. Aside from that, I have one other thought.
Let me ask, and Dami, for you as well. One thing that we see, right, is the industry has to tell its own stories, right? So any ecosystem that is growing, right, has to come together to tell its own stories, right? Increasingly, you're seeing tech come under fire, right, from government policy, from governments who have woken up to the disruptive power, right, of technology to sort of shift power bases, right? From Silicon Valley to Europe, right? We're seeing this like every day, and even down here as well, right? So how do you see that playing in terms of how, I know CC Hub sometimes has tried to bring the ecosystem together to sort of tell our side of the story towards government and policies maybe that don't make any sense for us. How do you see that playing out, and how can we do more of that?
Historically, we, as much as possible, try to avoid startups that are heavily regulated, because the Nigerian system is so unpredictable.
Can you hear her?
Okay. It's so unpredictable. We've only done one fintech deal, and that's because they're not as heavily regulated as Paystack, and even Gokada and all the other guys. It's just we try to just look at where they're going and just like, let's see, what the government is going to do before we invest. And that's not because we're not, risk takers. It's just we know the Nigerian government, and we've had our own share of dealing with the Nigerian government. So we just, as much as possible, just watch and then decide whether or not we want to go in. I'd say that, the government's participation has not been very impressive. The last government, Lagos State governor, I'd say did a fantastic work with just helping to understand, entrepreneurship and helping to build hubs around Lagos. I'm not sure about this governor, and we're still waiting to see what he's going to do. The federal government is in a cloud of their own, so I don't really have an opinion. I'm just, we're just waiting to see. Yeah.
Anyone else have a shot at that?
I think that's the advantage of an ecosystem. So I've had some people tell me that, don't fight, we'll fight for you. Because sometimes you can't be the one playing and the one fighting. And so I think, and when I was talking about it earlier, that like everybody realizes their part to play. I think there's progress. I think the way the ecosystem is structured, I'm convinced that all the different parts are there. We have, so my sense is that, yes, it's still very early, but I think we have the basic parts sorted. So I'm convinced that if the government turns off the internet tonight, like all of us will go on. I hope so. So like I'm convinced that there's a structure that can come out if things get bad. Yeah. So.
Okay, so with that, I'd like to say thank you very much. This has been an amazing and very diverse panel. I think collaboration is easy to say, right? As you said, it's very easy to say, and it sounds nice, right? But in practice, it's quite difficult, right? Especially in an environment like this. But one thing is sure, right? It's a key to the next phase of our ecosystem, and we'll be